They say some choices are made before you ever know you're standing at the edge of them, that once in a lifetime, a single door opens, and whatever waits on the other side decides who you'll be from that moment on. In the spring of 1879, in a rain-darkened town in New Mexico Territory, Colomatic found himself before one of those doors. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Los Cruces sat low and heavy under a washed-out sky, the night's rain still clinging to the earth. The dirt streets were dark and packed, wagon ruts brimming with shallow water that caught the thin morning light like broken glass. The air carried a mingled smell of wet soil, mesquite smoke, and the sour edge of beer drifting from the saloon across the way. Colomatic stepped off the end of the street and onto the warped porch of the railman's boarding house. He was 32, lean and sinewed by years of outdoor work, his face marked with the calm that comes only from surviving things most men never speak about. Once he'd ridden as a scout for the U.S. cavalry during the Apache wars, crossing country where mistakes didn't get forgiven. That life had taught him to read trouble before it announced itself. Now he worked guard for a freight outfit, riding shotgun between towns. Today he was in Los Cruces to collect payment for a delivery he'd overseen: bolts of cloth, barrels of flour, a crate of tools hauled in from Mesilla. The plan was simple: get paid, pick up supplies, head north before afternoon. Inside, a single oil lamp gave the lobby a dull yellow cast. The air was stale. A broad man with a flushed face leaned against the wall, boots crossed, chewing a matchstick. Another lay passed out on a bench, an empty bottle tipped on the floor beneath his hand. Cole nodded once and started toward the narrow hallway leading to the back rooms. He was halfway down when he stopped. It wasn't the sound of settling boards. It was smaller, sharper, a woman's cry, muffled, cut short. His pulse tightened, not fear, but that focused stillness that comes when you know you're stepping into something that isn't yours, but may not let you walk away. He followed the sound to a door with a bent latch and peeling paint, no lock. The frame was cracked, as if it had been forced one too many times. He laid his palm against the wood and pushed. The door creaked inward. The room beyond was barely larger than a closet. A narrow cot, a tin basin on the floor, a single high window nailed shut above the bed. The air smelled of damp cloth and old sweat. In the far corner, crouched low, was a young Apache woman, early 20s maybe, bronze skin, long black hair clinging to her shoulders as if she'd been in the rain or trapped in the heat too long. She wore a thin off-white linen shift, torn at the neckline and ripped high along one hip. The fabric stuck to her in the humid air. Her eyes locked onto his, dark and unblinking. There was fear there, but buried under something harder: defiance, maybe anger. Cole stopped in the doorway, one hand still on the frame. He'd seen women in many conditions during the war, most of them bad. This was different. There was no pleading in her look, only warning. "Don't mistake me for helpless. You've seen me like this, Cowboy," she said. Her voice was low, edged. Her English carried an accent, each word chosen carefully. "Now you must marry me, or they will punish us both." The words took a moment to settle. Cole's brow tightened. He glanced back into the empty hallway. "Who's coming?" "They keep me here," she said. "They say I'm not worth trade now. They will sell me to the ones who kill fast." Her voice didn't shake, but her hands were tense where they gripped the hem of her shift. Before he could ask more, the hallway stirred. Heavy boots on planks. The scrape of a spur. A man's voice, thick with whiskey, barked, "Time's up." Another laugh followed, ugly and short. Cole stepped fully inside and closed the door with his heel. The footsteps drew closer. Someone rattled the handle. "What's this?" a man called. "You think she's yours now?" Cole slid the rickety chair beneath the knob. He didn't answer. His mind was already moving. He could leave. Tell himself it wasn't his fight. He could step back into the hall and let the door close behind him. But memory rose up uninvited: other rooms, other women, other towns, and what happened when no one stood between. He looked at her and tipped his head toward the small, nailed window. "We can get out that way." She studied him, weighing him. Men had given her orders before. Those orders had cost her. but his voice was even, his eyes steady. She gave a short nod. Cole crossed the room, pulled a folding knife from his belt, and worked it under the painted seam of the window. The wood cracked softly. He pushed until the frame shifted enough to open. He shrugged out of his trail coat and held it toward her. She hesitated, then took it, slipping it over her shoulders. The coat swallowed her small frame, but it covered her skin. A fist struck the door. The chair shuddered. "Out," Cole said, low and firm. He lifted her by the waist, careful, and set her feet on the damp ground outside. Then he followed, dropping into the narrow alley behind the boarding house. The smell of wet dust filled his lungs. He took her hand, not gripping, just enough to keep her close, and moved fast, past stacked barrels. Past the saloon's back door. Behind them shouts burst out. Boots hammered wood. At the edge of the freight yard, his wagon waited, canvas-topped. Water barrel lashed to the side, bedroll in the corner. He lifted her in without a word, dropped the flap, and climbed onto the bench. The team leaned forward. Hooves splashed through puddles. The wagon rolled. He didn't look back. As they left Los Cruces behind, the wet streets gave way to open ground and low hills scattered with mesquite. Cole kept the pace. Steady, not so fast it drew eyes, not so slow anyone could gain on them. The rain had cooled the morning, but the heat was already building again. His hands stayed tight on the reins, eyes scanning the road and the scrub beyond. Inside the wagon, the young woman sat cross-legged on the bedroll, his coat wrapped around her like a blanket. The canvas blocked the view, but she felt every sway, every jolt, her fingers knotting in the fabric. Her breathing was even, but her chest still carried the sharp echo of the back room. The hallway, the laughter. She did not yet trust the man driving her away from all of it. But he had not touched her, except to help her through the window. That mattered. After a while she spoke. "Where are you taking me?" "North," Cole said without turning. "I've freight to guard toward Mesilla Springs. After that, we'll see what's safe. And then," there was a test in her voice. He considered before answering. "That depends on whether those men follow." A pause. "You got anyone who'll come looking for you?" Silence stretched. Then softly, "No one left." He had expected it. The road dipped into a shallow wash. He slowed the team, guiding them through wet sand where tracks blurred. Once back on firm ground, he reached under the seat for his canteen and held it back through the opening. "Drink. It's a long way yet." She took it after a moment, drank twice, then handed it back. "Why did you help me?" "Didn't see much choice," he said. "They were going to hurt you." "I was there," he paused. "I don't walk away from that." Something in her shoulders loosened. By midday, the hills opened into pale grassland. Cole found thin shade near a dry creek bed and drew the wagon aside. He tied the team, climbed into the back. "Food," she nodded. He set out bread, dried beef, a strip of hard cheese, giving her the larger share without remark. They ate in silence. Wind rustled leaves. Finally, she said, "They would have killed you too." "I figured that." "Where I was kept," she said, "they believe if an Apache woman is seen unclothed by a white man, she is ruined, not worth trade. And the man is killed for touching. What they say belongs to them." Cole's jaw tightened. "Doesn't sound like much worth keeping." When they finished, he checked the harness. She folded the blanket without being asked. He noticed. Late afternoon brought them to a hand pump beside a sagging shed. Cole refilled the canteens, scanning the open land. No riders. As the sun lowered, he knew they'd need cover. Somewhere a fire wouldn't betray them. The quiet work of travel pressed them closer, whether they were ready or not. And though he did not yet know where she would go once she was safe, he knew the choice he'd made in Los Cruces had already bound his road to hers. As the last of the day bled into the flats, Cole guided the wagon toward a low rise topped with scattered pinon and scrub oak, ground high enough to see from every side. He kept the fire small, just enough to warm coffee and cut the chill. He unhitched the team, set out the bedrolls. She hovered near the wagon at first, eyes tracking him. Then she crouched by the fire and began arranging the food. He poured 2 cups, handed one to her. "We'll ride early." She nodded. "The men who had me," she said. "They may follow." "Maybe." He met her eyes. If they do, we deal with it. They ate in a quiet that wasn't heavy anymore. She never turned her back on the dark. When he offered his coat, she shook her head. I will mend it first. From a small pouch, she drew a bone needle and began stitching the torn seam, neat and careful. You fix things with little, he said. If I waited for others, she answered, I would have nothing. Later. She lay down, wrapped in the coat. Cole sat with his rifle, watching the horizon. When she finally slept, her face softened. He fed the fire and kept watch, knowing tomorrow would take them deeper into country where there were fewer places to hide, but also fewer men to find them. And for the first time since Los Cruces, he wondered not just how to keep her safe, but what might come after. The creekside shack held the last warmth of the day as night settled fully over the cottonwoods. Inside, the stove breathed low and steady. Cole sat on the edge of the narrow bunk, cleaning his rifle out of habit more than need. Across from him, Tahana folded the mended coat and laid it beside him, her hands lingering on the fabric as if the simple act carried meaning. You could leave me here, she said quietly. Ride on. No one would blame you. Cole looked up. Outside, the creek whispered against stone, the sound slow and patient. I could, he admitted, but I won't. She studied his face, searching for something false, something borrowed. Finding none, she nodded once. Then you should know, she said. If those men see us together again, they won't care where we are. They'll come, I figured, he replied. Silence settled between them, not empty but full, of what had already been risked, of what still might be. At dawn, they stood outside the shack as pale light slid across the water. Mist lifted from the creek. The land lay open and quiet in every direction. No dust, no riders, only the long road north. Cole climbed onto the wagon bench, then paused. He offered his hand, not to pull her, just to be there. After a moment, she took it. The horses leaned into their traces. The wagon rolled forward. Cottonwood slipped behind them. The shack faded into the bend of the creek, becoming just another place the world would forget. Ahead waited miles of unclaimed road, towns where no one knew her name, valleys where the past would have to work hard to find them. Cole kept the team steady, eyes forward. Inside the wagon, Tahana sat with his coat around her shoulders, watching light spill through the canvas seams. For the first time in years, the future was not a wall. It was a direction, and together they were moving into it.